Hey folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from The Embellished Pod. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists, and if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll try to get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at embellishpod or TikTok with the exact same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, I have George joining me from Barrel Global, and Barrel Global is a really innovative approach that puts the idea of being able to have your own barrel or your own bottle in your hands at a much more attainable level for the average consumer. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. It is fast and it is fantastic. This morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you happen to be consuming this particular podcast, I have George joining me from Barrel Global as well as In Barrel. George, first of all, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because I'm from Western Kentucky. I'm going to slaughter it. So I'll let you kind of give me who George is and how did you get to sitting in this room and talking to me about Barrel Global.
Awesome, John. Well, thanks for having me. It's George Koutsakis. It's the Greek part of me. I'm half Greek, half Scottish. I guess my entry into the alcohol industry started when I was living in Japan. So I was managing the Brewdog bar there. It's a Brewdog. I mean, they had a show in the US, but it's a craft. You probably know of it. It's a big craft beer company. They have bars across the world, and I was managing the Tokyo one. And the way that worked was an importer of a lot of famous Scotch brands in Japan kind of brought that franchise in, and he did a lot of stuff with Japanese whiskey as well. So I kind of got access to a lot of really cool whiskeys in the bar. I started getting into it. I was really interested in the Japanese whiskey world and kind of elegance, the history. In the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to be a writer as well. So I kind of left that job, went back to Greece, living with my family. I was on Upwork writing articles for nothing. And I started kind of trying to get into the alcohol writing, like writing about whiskey. I feel my experience in Japan kind of was pretty cool, like added a lot. There weren't a lot of writers about Japanese whiskey back then. So I started going after people, LinkedIn, finding editors. I started writing for distiller.com, liquor.com. Then I eventually got Forbes.com, just a bunch of different ones, food and wine enthusiast. I was kind of all over the place. And I was also managing a blog for an online Japanese whiskey retailer called Decanta.com. And yeah, that just kind of opened me up to the world of whiskey. I mean, I'm Scottish, but I got into it in Japan, which is weird. But then went back to Asia, started doing whiskey auctions in Hong Kong, kind of got out of the writing a little bit, more into the kind of the auction side of things. It's quite interesting to me back then when China was buying a lot. And yeah, just writing, consulting with different brands. And then eventually I got to the point where I wanted to do my own brand. I kind of seen what the world was missing. I loved Japanese whiskey. I started with a Scotch whiskey brand called Coach Belt Whiskey. I've got it with a Formula One champion called Jensen Button. He's my business partner in it. And it's kind of like a fully premium Scotch blended whiskey brand that just focuses on the elegance and what a Scotch whiskey, blended whiskey can be. That's all we do. We don't do single malts. We don't do anything else. And it's kind of drawing from the hibikis and the taketsurus of Japan, but then also Coach Belt, the name is the kind of putting together of a machine, like all the best components to make the best Coach Belt car. We kind of drew those two worlds because you can't really talk about driving and drinking. So we had to do something with Jensen's history of, motorsports, but not obviously anything about speed or drive or gear. That wouldn't have really worked. So we started that. That went pretty well. And then during my time in Asia, I'd been trading a lot of old and rare Scotch whiskey casks in the auctions and such. And I saw an opportunity of doing something in the US because the Scotch cask industry I could see was going to start getting murky because there was just way too many investment companies, way too many snake oil salesmen. And that's happened right now. Like now there's like a BBC show out recently about cask fraud. All these people were overcharged in Scotland. I mean, there's some really good sellers, but a lot of people just took advantage of it back then. And obviously the price points in Scotch casks are hundreds of thousands. You can really just rip people off. But I saw a great opportunity in the US that wasn't happening. There wasn't a lot of cask sales. You could work directly with the distilleries. There was much more transparency. And I could just see that it was going to grow, and it was a great time to enter and do it right. From the start, like not focus on investment, not be promising returns, not being all smoke and mirrors and ripping people off. And here we are, like 3 years later, and it's going pretty well.
So you gave me a whole lot of different ways to kind of to go with questions, right? Because you gave a really, really good story of how you got there. But maybe we'll start with this, right? So you're a Greek Scot who finds yourself in Japan, right? So how do you get there? Let's start there. How do we get to Japan?
I've always loved anime. Really, I'm like a bit of a geek. Like I started watching like One Piece when I was 15, and I just really got into it. And I always wanted to go there, and I actually just went. I was an English teacher in Hiroshima for the first 6 months. I was just like, right, I'm gonna go. Found an English teaching job, and then figured out I have no patience for teaching, and I'm terrible at it. So I was like, right, what am I good at? Drinking. So I moved to Tokyo. I had some friends that worked in the Brewdog in Glasgow in Scotland because I'm half Scottish. And yeah, got the role, and that was it. But yeah, I was an English teacher to start. Not fun. Not something I like to do.
Yeah, no, education is a different kind of career path, and you also talked a little bit about being an author, and I think maybe you undersold that a little bit, right? Because you're writing for publications like Forbes and Financial Times and Food and Wine, kind of as a career transition. Was that a way to do some foundational research about where you wanted to go, with eventually creating your own brand, or was it as a result of writing you found you wanted to create your own brand?
Well, I'd always written like novel. I've got a bunch of half-finished novels from university, and when I left Japan, I wanted to focus on that, and I figured, hey, I'll just write on the side to make money and get better at writing, and that just kind of it toppled me into just doing way more of that and leaving these unfinished novels till when I'm like 50. But no, I was really enjoying the writing. I think the writing kind of just opened up my eyes to the world of alcohol, distilled spirits, and just how fun it can be across all different categories. And I think it just led me into starting to think about things that you weren't really seeing as a writer, because I get tons of press releases, always something happening, and I was like, hey, this doesn't exist, or this doesn't exist, and I think I could do it pretty good. And I think combined with the fact that writing doesn't pay that well, so I had to kind of write, and also I started consulting for some brands, and I got to the point where I was like, hey, why am I helping this guy make a really cool brand and make paying me all right, but why don't I just do it on my own? It's like I have all the pieces to be able to do it. And I think that's what kind of led to, and then just a bunch of like luck and good encounters, and all jazz.
Yeah, I mean, you found a really interesting way to explore two of the most underpaid professions of the world, both teaching and writing, right? So, people that are either educating, the future of the world, or putting out art in written format, grossly underpaid situations.
Yeah.
But you find yourself in Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're working with distiller. Did these cultural influences have any shaping, say, on Coach Built, or even, kind of further along in the Barrel Global?
I think so. I think, honestly, for me, the fact that I've lived in, grew up in Europe, lived in Japan, I live in Mexico now, Mexico City. And I think that's just shaped the way I go towards building a brand. And I see it. I think the reason I've been decently successful is because there are writers out there that are amazing, and they focus, and they do tastings, and they're very, very like for the geeks of that was never me. I think I can see the product or the business at hand, but I can also see the bigger picture, because I've lived in a lot of different places, and I can see it from a kind of outward manner. You need those people that are honed in, focused, and really providing the knowledge and everything in the industry. But I think from my point of view and my approach is more, I see the bigger picture. I see what's missing within that picture. And I can see the future of putting all that together. And I think Barrel Global is a good example of me coming in as a foreigner, but seeing that there's this amazing opportunity in this industry of small distillers that are doing amazing things, but they maybe don't have the cash flow or the kind of opportunity to sell barrels and build that kind of client. So Barrel Global comes in and works with all these small distillers, buys a bunch of barrels from them that gives them cash flow, but then has a back-end portal and a users area and a whole customer service area that they don't have the opportunity to do. So we make it easy for them because we plan the tours and we plan everything around how they want to do stuff, and it's quarterly. But then we also have the capabilities of the clients having a nice, portal area. They can see their stock, request samples, request tours, request bottlings. So I feel that the kind of living abroad, whether it's in Asia, I was living in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe, I think just it helps me see things from a different perspective that often works. Sometimes not. Sometimes
so you took the step of writing about it, right? And then you moved kind of the next step closer. If we're walking the path of George getting to Barrel Global, you wrote about whiskey. Then you moved into creating your own whiskey with Coach Built, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of helps you maybe learn the ropes of some of the pitfalls that come into that before you kind of move into Barrel Global. Were there any were there any lessons that came out of Coach Built that directly influenced how you were going to shape Barrel Global?
Oh yeah, Coach Built started like a disaster. Like it was like I had no idea what I was doing. I was, I just messed. I got introduced to Jensen Button. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how am I gonna? This guy's a world champion. That was just a real just thrown in the deep end, figuring out all the ropes. Luckily, the brand did really well, and it's stuck, and it's got some big partnerships going with like Williams Racing and some cool Formula One stuff we're doing. But at the start, at least for me, it was very chaotic, and I think. Yeah, a lot of lessons came into Barrel Global and just how to begin, the people you need, the organization you need. Like Barrel Global is a very well-oiled machine now in the US, but even that came with lots of different lessons. I think no business I've started has started just like great. Everything is bumpy at the beginning. You need to get the rope and just positioning yourself. I think having a really clear vision is what helped Coach Built. Just what we are and what we do, and we don't stray from that. And that's when times get tough that you remember that vision, and that's what pushes you ahead. Barrel Global was the same, and I think now in an industry where barrels are looked at a certain way, there's a lot of castrating. Us having a very strong identity and what we're doing and who we're helping, and the fact that we have great customer reviews and everybody's happy. That I think that's very important. I learned that in Coach Built. You can't just be a jack of all trades when you're doing a brand. You need to hone in and have a vision and have a goal and have, an identity of what you want to achieve.
So Barrel Global, and we've talked kind of around it, but let's talk directly to what Barrel Global is. You've mentioned being able to help, small businesses offload maybe some whiskey, being able to have individual investors be invested in whiskey and be able to get their own bottles out. Like what? Yeah. What's the initial business vision, I guess, and maybe what's the the next 5 years look like?
Okay, yeah. So Barrel Global, as I said, from like a Scotch background, it's a company in the US where we basically work with a lot of different distilleries. We buy batches of barrels from them, and then we offer these to our customers worldwide. We have, we run a lot of marketing. We've got a really good portal where people can manage their barrels. But the way I'd say it works from like just starting out, we go to, say, Still Austin, is someone we work with recently. They're a great brand. We don't work with big contract distillers that are just making nameless stuff, because I don't feel, that's going to work. And we're already starting to see news that that's not working. Mm-hmm. We get behind brands that are really focused on their own bottlings, are really focused on their own brands, are growing and winning awards and doing great, cool things. And we sell them for collecting. People can invest, they can buy new fill and resell them later, but we don't push returns or investment. It's more collecting. You can bottle your barrel, you can resell it later. So we go to Still Austin, we buy 50 barrels. We try and go there, do a video shoot, speak to the owners, get some really cool content. And then we run ads, and our sales team sells these barrels to individuals, businesses across the world, lots in the US. This is, I'd say, 70% new fill to hold and resell later, 30% to businesses. And it's something we're growing now, that people that buy aged barrels directly to bottle, whether it's for their restaurant, their bar, their hotel, horse owners, yachts. We get a lot of different types, construction companies for gifting, real estate agencies. And then we run the ads, we do some co-posts with the distilleries, we put out press releases, and it's just continuing to grow that variety as opposed to working with like massive contract distillers in Kentucky. We've got like Law's Whiskey House in Colorado, Still Austin, Kings County in New York. Speaking of Frey Ranch now, Rabbit Hole, a lot of cool distilleries are doing cool things. We do work with bigger people like Bardstown Bourbon Company, Green River, but they also, do a lot of their own bottlings. And a lot of cool stuff as brands. And then we also do tequila. So we've recent month, Scotch wasn't really working for our bourbon buying database. I don't know why, but tequila seems to. So we're heavily, it's a weird one, but we're heavily going into tequila, and that's opening a whole new kind of groups of large hospitality groups and a lot of cocktail bars. And, the growth of tequila is obviously something that people are very confident in. So that's going well. And it's Barrel Global. Then beyond that, we now are heavily focused on helping people get bottlings across all states. So we've kind of got a logistical map that we've figured out. So we can bottle your cask, help you with the colas and licensing, label design, packaging, and then delivering the cask to your end location in over 42 states in the US. So while you've got big distilleries that sell tons of barrels to people that want to do their own brand, we're more like 1 barrel, 4 barrels, bespoke to businesses. We're speaking to some like big casinos, some really cool people in different states that kind of don't have the time to go through all that process, figure out how to pass it through into their state with distribution, how to get it to be able to sell for retail. And that's something we've, very happy that we're figuring out, and we've figured out kind of the 3-tier system.
So, and it's an interesting concept, right? Is that it's not necessarily focused primarily on prospectors, right? You're really looking at folks that are collectors or want to bottle their own. And it's a really nice revenue stream for some of these smaller producers because, we've all talked about the whiskey market in North America specifically, not necessarily, getting smaller, but probably leveling off to where it would be without this real weird thing that happened in 2020 that sort of made all of the markets go bananas. As you look at, you named off a couple of brands that you partner with. How do you find new brands? Does your investors say, "Hey, I would like you to explore this," or do you identify them yourselves? Do the brands approach you? Like, how do you define or identify who's going to be next that you want to partner with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we watch the industry very closely. A lot of my team now, like we've got one of the guys works in Kentucky. He's a descendant of E.H. Taylor. Like it's his great grandfather used to be head of tours at like Castle and Key. So he's really in the industry, knows a lot of people. We just monitor. We see what distilleries are doing cool things. Awards are a big one for us. It's not the definitive point of a distillery, obviously, but it does go to show like that it's good juice if it's happening across a lot of different competitions. The story is important to us, and also we do ask our database quite often, like, hey, like, have you heard? Is there anybody you like? And that often now at the size of the database, it can provide decent data. But yeah, it is a tricky one, just finding distilleries that want to work with us the way we want them to, when it's like being social, being very transparent about it and showcasing it. A lot of distilleries just want to sell nameless stuff to protect their brand. So it is something it is challenging to find, but I think we're getting to a point now that people can see that, we're a valuable company to a lot of distilleries, and they are more willing to give us kind of the naming rights that we need on the barrels to be able to mention where it's been distilled on labels of clients, and the social media support and marketing support. But yeah, I also want to have like a lot of different states. I don't want to have like be purely Kentucky. I think in the future, when some of these clients want to resell this, having a grand variety of, mash bills and distilleries, I think that's going to be much easier to offload and resell to businesses that we're working with that want to do a lot of different single casks and such, as opposed to just buying, 1 million barrels of, this one distillate from this one massive contract distiller, I don't see how people are going to be making a return on those in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're kind of leading into there, and there are a lot of folks that are buying the same whiskey from the same place, slapping a label on it and selling, which is going to be problematic, especially in this market as it sort of changes. Now, there's a couple thousand distilleries in the United States now. There's only a couple hundred, like 10 or 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Keeping up with that list has to be, pretty tough, right? Kind of paying attention to the market indications of who's doing well is great. But when you buy these barrels from the distillers, are you moving them, or are you buying them at distillery and paying storage fees or whatever it happens to be for it to stay on site next to the other distillate?
Yeah. So it depends where they are. We do have a central kind of storage location in Kentucky because we're very much about, again, the experience. So we want clients to go visit their particular barrel, draw from it, see it, touch it. So we have a central location in Kentucky because a lot of the distilleries, obviously, we work with are there. So we move them all to this one warehouse. It has like a venue, we can do parties, we can bring people in. We just want to make it very much, again, about the experience. And that's why Murray, I told you, the E.H. Taylor descendant, he's also head of distillery experience, like head of barrel experience in Kentucky. So he takes these guys all around, guys like an encyclopedia of bourbon. So he just takes them to all the best places, distilleries. He knows everybody. But then again, you have locations that are pretty far that we do need to store at the distillery. So we just have storage partnerships and agreements with certain, with Law's Whiskey House in Colorado, really close with Alan there, and he stores the barrels. We sent a client there recently from Taiwan and built out all his 10 barrels, tried them. It was an awesome experience. And so, we try and find good storage locations in different states because ideally the barrels stay in the state that they're supposed to be matured in. Because, it'd be weird if it's in Colorado and we're taking it to Kentucky. It may not turn out the way Laws envisioned the whiskey to turn out, and that's kind of what we're selling. So Kentucky storage facility, and then other states, we either do them at the distillery or find another location in that state to store them in.
Yeah, and that sounds like a regulatory nightmare trying to find other locations to store stuff in that's in individual states. But as you're sort of marketing these barrels to your database of people that might be purchasing, the inevitable question comes up. Well, what is the thing that I'm buying taste like, or what is it gonna taste like? How do you sort of answer that question?
So most of the time when we buy barrels from a distillery, we try and get a popular mash bill of a product that they distill. So Laws is a good example, is the 4-grain. So, super, well-known. We buy barrels of that. And then that gives clients the opportunity to kind of go out and grab a bottle of, aged, actual bottled product that they can say, hey, this is what it's probably going to taste. This is what it's likely going to taste very close to. Obviously, barrels are different, but that's how we do that. So we try and get the most popular mash bill, and then we mix it up as we go. Other times we just do a very popular mash bill that's a general mash bill, so like a high wheat or a high rye. I know for a fact we're going to do a really cool mash bill with a recipe that E.H. Taylor actually wrote because the guy Murray has it. So we're actually maybe going to do one with Wilderness Trail around that mash bill, which will be super fun. And again, naming rights, that took a while because it's now Campari, but ended well, and it's going to be a good partnership. So we kind of do our research, but usually when we sign a new distillery, it's a product that they sell and are proud of and are very good at making.
Yeah, I mean, naming rights can be expensive, especially when you're dealing with somebody like Campari, because I think about some other folks that have dealt with them, at least on the wild turkey side, and those prices can get way, way out of hand. What you're doing with Barrel Global is pretty unique. And others have, maybe you or other podcasts have described it as sort of the first, front-facing barrel ownership company in the United States. It's a gap in the market that I don't think any of us realized existed except for you. So how did you identify that this was a gap in the market?
I mean, honestly, this is one of those luck situations. I mean, I knew no one was really doing it, but I didn't know that we could do it like this. It's kind of in the US, like with the 3-tier system and a lot of regulations. I thought we could do it, but we didn't know until we checked everything and really went for it and paid the lawyers. And then we're like, oh, wow, this is, and the more we go, the more I'm seeing. That's why I'm very happy, because back like a few years ago, I was like, like when cask stuff started coming around and all these investment companies, like, there are a few investment cask companies in the US that we don't want to be like. And that's why we do have our bottling department, and we are heavily like, I've got team members that are literally out there trying to figure out states and have lots of distribution partnerships to get these bottles into these states, which is, a big, yeah, like we're doing like a few states a month and figuring it out as we go. Because gifting is different to selling, obviously. We can pass through bottles to gift, but then if you're selling it, anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's honestly just been like an idea. I believed that it could work. And it's just as we go, I'm seeing more and more that there is a big space in the market for this kind of business, and that it is possible if you can figure out all the right pieces. But to be sure, at the beginning, it was just a gut feeling. I was like, I don't see anybody doing this. I think it could go really well. But I think, yeah, you never know till you actually get to the point where you're like, wow, shit, here we go.
The 3-tier system does make, sort of the United States a little bit unique. I mean, I'm sure there's other countries in the world that are harder to deal with, especially around alcohol consumption. But that's one of what we could consider many high barriers for individual consumers to be able to participate in the whiskey space specifically. And you've got a technology platform, and you talked about, finding retailers and states to try to make sure you can get it to the end consumer appropriately. What are some other ways that, your technology platform and what you're doing is solving some of these barriers or accessibility problems?
Well, something we promised our clients we would do, and I'm doing now, is we're launching the barrel marketplace. It's ready and it's got listings on it, and sales have already started happening in the back, but we're going to announce it and launch it soon. And that's our clients listing their barrels for other people. So it's not business to business like hogshead.com. It's like literally they put their barrels on, it's open, and people can go, like retailers and stores and other businesses can come and see it. And then, there's just an admin fee from us on that. But that is something I promised we would do. Is, an exit strategy. Beyond that, I think, I was just heavily focusing on growing these exit strategies for clients now. So getting that infrastructure in each state with pass-through distributors, so then we can target businesses in said state. So a good example is Arkansas. So Arkansas, a client bought a few barrels for their restaurants, probably the most popular one in where's the place where Oaklawn is? Little Springs or something like that. Anyway, so we sold him a few barrels. Great client. He wanted to bottle them, do the first independent bottling in Arkansas, actually. And we figured out those legalities. And now, Arkansas is open to us. So we can speak to casinos there, businesses there. So my goal there is just to have, by the end of this year, have all 42 or how many states we can figured out. We just figured out Virginia. We're working on Connecticut. California, Texas, New York, that's all fine. And then we can easily have then sales members just go to multiple businesses because it's already been figured out. And that's the main thing that differentiates us from other cask selling companies, is that while we do sell new fill barrels, we do have a lot of businesses and more every day. And it's something that people didn't know they wanted a lot of the time, but it's something that if you show them, they're like, oh, wow, well, this is free marketing for my brand. I can put my name on a label. I can do whatever I want with the bottle and the label. We've got a design department, the licensing department. It's just making it as easy as possible for these people to put their brand or their name or their agency on a bottle. The back end, the portal was a big thing for us. The marketplace, and I think expansion into like international markets is a big one. So the same thing we're doing in the US. I have a lot of connections from my time in Europe and Asia. So we're seeing a lot of like interest in tequila, good interest from bourbon in Europe. So yeah, that's, I think for me, the goal of Barrel Global is eventually to all these barrels our clients have bought that they want to resell. We have a place for them.
I think it's interesting that you bring up independent bottlers, because it's something that's not super well explored in the United States. There's a couple of folks that are doing really good jobs in the United States. Um, if I'm thinking about Single Cask Nation and Lost Lantern, they're doing phenomenal jobs of doing independent bottlings, and there's a handful of other folks out there. But this is giving an opportunity for people to explore that, even if they're not jumping out there with a $10 million budget right off, right off the start. Um, but you're identifying a way to sell to people that want to do independent bottling, or people that want to build a house brand, whether it is a restaurant or a hotel, or give out gifts. You mentioned construction companies, businesses all the time want to do things like this, and finding a company to partner with is pretty tough on that. I guess immediately thinking of, if I'm a brand and I sell you, if I'm a distiller and I sell you a barrel, and somebody else owns it for a little while, and then 5 or 10, let's just say 5 years later, that barrel is on your marketplace at this point, and I know that particular lot turned out really, really well for me financially. Can I come back and buy that back? Of course, obviously at a higher price.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I think we've experienced yet, because I think Barrel Global's still 3 years old, but
Right.
I can see that being and I can see a point being also, say somebody bought like 20 barrels from that batch, and there's the option of putting it on the marketplace waiting for a higher price, but there will also be options of being like, hey, how about you don't make that much profit, you make a little bit less, but you sell it all right off the bat, and there's always that negotiation to be done. But I see that being very possible, especially for a lot of these small distillers that aren't making tons of whiskey that we work with. I can very much see that being a possibility.
Now tell me a little bit about the on-site experience, right? Because you mentioned you have a place where you have some whiskey and you've had people come in and taste it, and you've had people go out there. And tell me what this is like, being able to do effectively a Kentucky bourbon retreat to the state of Kentucky for Global.
So actually, we did launch something called the Kentucky Bourbon Retreat, where people can go distill their own barrels, like a batch of 10 barrels. But anyway, that's separate. Basically, it's really cool. I'm really happy how this has turned out, because before we had the issue of, a lot of palletized warehouse, really big distillers, like, the likes of Bardstown, etc., that you couldn't touch your own barrel and see your own barrel. And we had some clients, because that's something we always talk about. We want to be at the forefront of the experience and customer service. That's why, like, on Trustpilot, we've got like 4.9, 130 reviews. People are happy, and I want that to continue, and I want it to grow. First step was finding Murray. He's great for the team. He's grew up in Kentucky his whole life, and Franklin, descendant of some very big bourbon people, and knows everything about bourbon. So part of the tour is going to multiple distilleries when they do come to visit their barrels, taking them for like special tours with the distilleries that we have, that they get a bit more insight and a bit, some hidden areas, etc. For their actual barrels, we're now stored at a warehousing place called Extended Stave. That's what they focus on, hospitality. We've got a really good partnership with them. So people can go, they can actually touch their own barrel. They're there, able to be pulled out and sampled. We had a client recently that was not a difficult client, just, worried that his barrels weren't there. And, it's always an issue when it's not something you're holding. Like, you can go buy a bottle and have it in your house and you're fine. But when it's something that you can't see and touch and feel and isn't there in your backyard, it creates a bit more stress for some people. And we really want to help, negate that and lower it. So this client was a bit worried, and he walked by, and he actually saw his barrel on his own that was there, touched it, pulled it down, pulled from it himself, super happy, super excited about it, wants to do like a video about his experience and such. And yeah, that's how it is. It's kind of how it works. Sometimes our sales manager will go with Murray to Kentucky to kind of guide the clients. We'll do a dinner, we'll do some tastings, we'll take them to some different distilleries, it's kind of based around the itinerary they want, with the central part obviously visiting and tasting their own barrels.
So you mentioned this, right? And I didn't mean to lead into it this early, but let's go ahead and talk about it. The retreat where there's a hands-on distilling experience. Tell me about that.
So that's something we launched with Casey Jones Distillery, and it's something really cool that we do for some businesses. So I don't know, instead of going on a yoga retreat, people can come on a whiskey retreat, and then they can make barrels that then the company holds and can later do into corporate gifts or whatever. And the good thing about this is that the mash bill is 100% customizable, and the minimum is only 10 barrels. So that's something that we managed to do with Casey Jones, because usually if you want to do your own bespoke mash bill, it's like 100 barrels for a lot of distilleries, a lot of the time. So we made this retreat. It's like a 3-day thing. People go to the distillery, they see the grains, they can watch the fermentation, they can fill the barrels, very hands-on experience, things you wouldn't normally ever do on a distillery tour. I did it and I got new make all over myself because the hose was like flying everywhere. But yeah, that's kind of like a more business or families or groups of friends, but it's a minimum of 10 barrels. The price isn't too far different to what you would actually be paying for new build barrels. The only difference here is that it's 100% your mash bill. You can get a lot of videos and footage when you go and do it with your friends, and it's also like an annual thing that you could do with your company if you wanted to go stay in Kentucky and just have a really hands-on bourbon experience. So the idea with that is we want to expand it and do it in different states. So we want to do a Montana one where you go and ride horses, or we want to do a New York one where you go and make some cocktails as well, do all the Manhattan and Brooklyn stuff, but then make some barrels. So the goal with, if this grows enough, is to do it in different states with different experiences as well.
Now, I'm going to ask about this one again because Casey Jones is about 30 minutes that way from me, right? So did this already happen, or have you have that planned for in the next? Because I remember seeing the press release on this, and I can't remember if it already passed or if it's in the next couple months.
No, we launched that, I think it was last year. And we don't heavily push it. I think we're kind of like trying to grow the team, but just between everything, it's just like bottlings, and it's not something we heavily push, but we do occasionally get businesses come through and ask for it, who have seen it or want a special experience, or friends that just want a more bespoke experience opposed to what the mash bills that are out there. But it is something I do want to grow, just when I have more time. I think that the business, that selling to businesses in aged stock is more of a priority right now. Just something, a big part of the business that we want to work. And eventually that will lead, I think, to more Kentucky retreats, because I think the approach to businesses will lead to some bigger businesses that want to do more corporate gifting and kind of want to maybe invest a bit more, as opposed to just buying one barrel. They do want to have that option of, buying 10 barrels, letting them mature, bottling one each year, and then also getting people to go and see them. It's a good team building thing, I think.
So, and you have 10 barrels, you have a price to kind of go do that thing that gives you, an average price per barrel. And the prices per barrel can vary really, really wildly, at least from whatever I've heard recently in the market. I'm not a purchaser. I'm not a seller. I'm just a guy that lives kind of on the periphery at this point. But aside from, age statement being a thing that can influence the price of a barrel really, really quickly, beyond that, as you're looking at the valuation of the things that you guys are holding on to, how do you build your mechanism for valuing, say, a new make barrel from this distiller and that distiller when they could be wildly different?
Yeah, I mean, that often comes down to just the operation of the distillery. So whether it's pot still distilled or column still, depending, obviously the bigger guys, it's just like a machine that our cost will be cheaper, as opposed to like, Free Ranch in Nevada, that's a running farm, and they have a certain amount of barrels they can make. They need to the grains will be a bit more expensive. The labor will be more expensive. So we tend to get our cost price, and then we can evaluate, all the marketing we run, costs, everything we have, all the overheads we have running the marketplace and the ads and such. And yeah, we tend to, new fill, I'd say, is between 2,500 for a cask. It's a bit higher than buying direct from a distillery, but then you have all the kind of the ability of buying one. So I don't have any minimums. You can buy a barrel, you can buy 10 barrels. It's not like some of the cask companies that lock you into 24 or 12. So yeah, it'll vary between 22, 25, and then age stuff, it just depends. It can go up to like $5-6 grand a barrel if it's like a 5-year-old. And then obviously there's like just, dry goods and bottling costs and such, but that's pretty much the price range. I feel, it's not super cheap, but I don't really agree with selling barrels too cheap, because a lot of these brands are trying to release premium bottles. We're trying to get bourbon into that premium space. Like, obviously it's never going to reach where Scotch is with the age, but I feel if you're selling barrels for like dirt cheap, it's very hard to then justify selling a bottle for like $500 or, and I really believe in the service we provide and the service, the customer service, all the ease of mind, the ease of doing things, the back end portal. So I think that price is fair in terms of, barrels that we sell.
So go
Yeah.
ahead.
And then, we do have some deals. Like if you buy more, you get one free. So we have like if you buy 6 barrels, you get one free. It's kind of like a kind of economies of scale kind of thing. That people are able to get much better prices if they buy more. If you buy one, it is that price.
Yeah. So how do you like, people want to come to you and they want to invest in barrels? How do you validate or vet that the individual is someone, because I'm sure you get a whole lot of messages from people that do not have the finances to buy barrels, right? How do you go through a vetting process to make sure that by the time you get to, spending significant amount of time building a relationship, that they're there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just honestly the sales team's job. We do have like a form that you fill in when you kind of, the marketing leads you. The lead comes in, like what you're looking to spend, what you're looking to do. But honestly, that's pretty much evident from the first call the sales guys have. I mean, you can tell if someone, tons of people come in and be like, hey, I want my barrel in my living room. And we're like, all right, this is one of those calls. Like I want to, but some people, come in and you don't expect it and they want to buy 100 barrels. So it's very much just, we invest a lot into marketing, a lot into like demographics and just honing to different audiences. I own a marketing agency aside from my brands and a branding agency that my brands go through, but also we have clients. So we have a cool marketing team that's just always like looking at the analytics, working on honing in, to people that, the kind of people that we want to talk to. Different states. We have really good data and like which are our top buying states, and we kind of focus on that. And that also leads to where we buy barrels from sometimes, because we have like tons of clients in Ohio. I'll look for an Ohio distillery. That's also something that, but yeah, it's honestly just, keeping at it, tweaking. And that's how the sales guys, that's their job, just to kind of siphon through that, because it's a decent sized purchase, so it's not going to be for everyone.
Yeah, and I say that partially because I've talked to a barrel investment platform before, and I went to their website and filled out, like, hey, I just want to get the introductory information as a part of my research for the podcast. Now to get a call from a guy who's like, hey, are you interested in investing? Like, I'm going to explain to you. I have 2 children. I am in the middle of I do not have the funds, so you don't have to waste any time on me. I really just wanted this information so I could do a little research for a podcast that I'm recording. And he was like, okay, no problem, right? But not everybody's, going to be kind of on the front end of that. They're, everybody thinks that they're going to be able to buy a barrel of whiskey for, $400 or $500, right? Like that's all it's going to be. And that's not at all how any of this works. So it could be problematic, but you've mentioned kind of, working with in barrel for the tequila thing. Tequila thing is really reductive there. I apologize. But are there other spirits that you're interested in, being a part of? I need to think of the United States. The American single malt is kind of making its rise. You mentioned being, living in Japan. Is there a Japanese whiskey portion of this as well?
So we do. I think for Barrel Global, we're focused more on bourbon. I'm looking at American single malt. It's very interesting to me, so I'm having conversations about that. Tequila is growing a lot. We do a bit of rye. Scotch just hasn't really worked for our database. I still do some private sales of Scotch from here and there, but Japanese whiskey to me is just too overpriced. Like a barrel is like 10, 15 grand for new make from a distillery nobody knows, and I think that's just been like over. It's just went way too nuts. New make, they sell new make bottles now for like $100. It's pretty crazy. So that's not really what I'm going to go into. With In Barrel that you mentioned, In Barrel is kind of our platform where people can go and actually edit their own label for a minimum of 3 bottles. So that's a kind of separate arm of Barrel Global, whereas we sell full barrels, which are like 200-300 bottles. That's a way more bespoke e-commerce part where people can just make their own label and it's shipped to 42 states. That I think will do different spirits. I'm not sure because you mentioned In Barrel, but yeah, I think we do tequila now. So people like, you can go on, you're in Florida, you make your own label, upload your own picture of you and your kids, and it's sent to your door. 3 bottles, same liquid, 1 bottle shape. It's not as bespoke, but it's really good liquid, really premium tequila. And that I want to add to. I want to do like so it's not clashing with our barrel sales. We might do like a 15-year-old bourbon, 500 bottle release, 3, you make your own label, MOQs, 3 bottles. I do an old and rare rum, I do Macallan. And then that's just like a really nice, again, platform. We do focus a lot on technology that people can easily go and do that. And we're going to kind of relaunch it this month, the platform, because we've kind of tweaked it and made it a bit sexier.
Yeah, and I asked about Japanese whiskey for maybe kind of one reason, and I know there's some pretty heavy crossover, at least within the American whiskey marketplace and anime fans, right? Like if you were able to, buy some Japanese whiskey and then create an anime brand, you could charge $500 a bottle, and people would buy that, right? Because anime people have money and they want to spend money on whatnot.
I own a brand called Multiverse. It's malt, and I write comic books, and my partner illustrates them, and we do single barrel releases. That's part of Barrel Global. Didn't know you didn't know that. It's
that's awesome. It reminds me, there's a whiskey brand, bourbon brand in the United States that's doing that with film, having that kind of. If you could pick up the rights to one of the major anime brands and throw that on a label, you're gonna sell everything, right? Because that's the way it's gonna work. But this approach that you have is pretty unique, and I've read or heard where it's almost like a democratization of barrel ownership as a theme. Do you think that this is gonna, as the spirits industry changes over the next 10 years, right? Because we're on a different cycle than we were 5 years ago. Do you think that this vision, this thing that you're doing, has the potential to transform some parts of the industry over the next 5 years?
I mean, yeah, that's what I'll say about any of my brands. If I don't, I shouldn't be doing it. I do. I think I do see the value in, traditional brands, and, there's some amazing brands and amazing stories out there, but I also very much see the value in personalization. There's a lot of great businesses. There's a lot of lifestyle businesses. I feel back in the day, the likes of Soho and Four Seasons and, now they're brands in their own right, and they're lifestyle brands, and they're brands that people that look up to, and they can be selling their own spirits. I feel there's a lot of people that just didn't know this was a possibility that we speak to, that are like, oh, what? I can do that. I want to do it. So, and that's us just starting out. So I feel there is a very big opportunity for businesses, individuals, people that own horses, like the money they spend for the horses in the Derby. They want to put their horse on a label. They want to put their yacht on a label. I feel that if we make it easy enough for people, which we're doing, and we have that infrastructure, so it's not a pain, and it's literally like, here's your samples. I like it. Here's your finished bottle. If we can do that, I see a huge growth and huge opportunities in the US market and the world for something like this. And then within Barrel, the more, again, hands off, not talking to anybody, just going on, making your own label for a party you're having. And then you get premium bottles, as opposed to buying, a lower quality of that spirit in the shop, and it's nothing to do with you. I see the vision. I mean, it's my vision, but I see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it makes sense, right? If I look at maybe what happened around, wine in the early '90s to late '90s, whenever you get into kind of Sideways and Paul Giamatti, and everybody went nuts over wine in North America. Every restaurant wants to have their own house blend, right? Their own house wine, whatever. And that's a pretty easy thing to do, but that wasn't necessarily an easy thing to do in the whiskey marketplace. And so kind of the stopgap for a lot of these places was, let's go do single barrels. We'll go out and we'll pick our own single barrel. We'll do all of these things, but this is taking it to yet another level where you're not at the mercy of XYZ distillery showing you 5 bottles or 5 barrels. You taste them. Maybe you like one of them. Maybe you don't like any of them, but if you want to have your own house label, you got to pick one of them, right? And bring it back in. But then you're only a couple hundred bottles in. And so you've got to kind of replace it. Whereas this gives them the opportunity to build their own house brand, lifestyle brands, all of these different people that might want to market something without it just being rebranded Indiana bourbon that a whole lot of folks have kind of built brands off of the top of, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's some phenomenal whiskey, but it gives you a little more control over what you're putting out and why you're putting it out. And I know we're getting relatively close on time, but I don't know that we've actually mentioned, like, if I am an investor, where do I go to be a part of Barrel Global?
Yeah, so go straight to barrelglobal.com. First thing you'll see is to kind of request a consultation. You put in some details, your number. One of our guys will give you a call, whether it's Charles, Juan, Murray, and just depends on what. There will be a section where you say you want to bottle, you want to invest, what do you want to do, and yeah, they'll get in touch, have a call, and run you through some options and pricing, and kind of get a feel of what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be the easiest way to go about it.
Now, do you guys have a minimum investment tier that you have to kind of cross over to be a part of it, or just you're going to find out the price of a barrel, and if you can afford it, you can afford it?
Pretty much, yeah. You can buy a barrel,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something I'll never change. As I said, I don't, you can buy a barrel, or you can go to in barrel and make a few bottles. But yeah, you can buy a barrel up to as many barrels as you want. Obviously, as I said, discounts apply to more volume, but it's one minimum.
So, and then I lost my next thought. It's all gone. It just kind of escaped into the vapor.
Yeah.
Your I lost it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have to clip that. So as we get close to closing out, are there any points around Barrel Global, or in Barrel, which we didn't even spend much time talking about, that you want to kind of make sure people know about, as a part of kind of reimagining some of the whiskey marketplace in North America, or in the world for that matter?
I mean, I would just close with the fact that if you've ever thought, if you're a spirits enthusiast and you've ever thought of having your own label, your own exact bottle design, it doesn't need to adhere to the distillery's branding and IP. If you've ever had that thought, whether it's large scale or small scale, that's what we're working on. Just having a great agile team that can help people with getting their bottles across the entire US, help them with design, licensing, liquid, visiting. It's supposed to be a cool experience, and we're trying to make it as easy and fun as possible for anybody that's ever had that thought. So that's kind of what we have. I don't think I have anything else besides that. I think we covered most of it.
That I did remember my question eventually now.
There
Right.
we go.
So, there are a lot of, whiskey type events that happen across the United States. Do you guys attend any of these as Barrel Global to, mingle either with distillers or mingle with potential barrel purchasers?
So we've not done as much of that as I hoped we'd do. We are starting to do more. Like we attend as a team. So we go to, like, we've been to the Kentucky Derby, the Arkansas Derby. We go to a few whiskey events. But I do want to start having more of a presence, to be honest. Again, it just comes down to, like, we just need more people. It's like I'm trying to find, we're growing quick, but we need people to be able to do this. But I definitely, this goal, like end of this year, we definitely want to hit a few more festivals as a team. And then next year, definitely have a presence and a booth in more of these. Because again, some of our clients really want to see that too.
Yeah. And like I said, it is a unique concept that, puts the idea of having your own label much, much closer to the hands of the average consumer. A lot of folks that do similar type things in the marketplace, the barrier to entry is significant to be able to participate in this. So, as a whiskey fan, as a consumer of the product that I talk about on a regular basis, it's really nice to see visionaries bring forward solutions that could be attainable for the average consumer. Because while this is we're in the spirits category, we're in the luxury category to begin with, right? Because we're talking about bourbon, which is not an essential for anyone, but being able to kind of lower those barriers to a normal consumer's level is pretty phenomenal. So thank you. And thank you for joining me on this podcast. Is that, time is the thing that you can't create more of. And you've already said you don't have enough people to get everything done that you need to get done. And so you've taken, an hour out of your day and had a conversation with me about this. So thank you so much.
Man, thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Embellish Pod. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform you're consuming this on. Leave a comment if at all possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram using Embellish Pod. And you can give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com. It's got all of my links, accounts, contact details, and more. Thanks for stopping by.
You hear my audio okay?
Yep, everything sounds great. You have a good microphone, which is a really nice change because sometimes people don't have a great microphone, and so the audio is less than stellar.
Yeah, I did a podcast recently, and I'd been using it wrong. I think I'd been like here, and someone like made me, put my face right on top of it. So I think I got the hang of it now. I've used it wrong for like months. So.
And it depends on where it receives more than anything, right? Everything, because I've done audio for like live shows before. If you can't feel your breath coming off the microphone, you're too far from it. Because when you get back here, it picks up all of the ambient room noise, right? But you also don't want to, like it's bad video to have my face kind of right up on top of it. So you kind of find a place in between those two things. And you also have to understand, is it facing, because they have these cardioids in them. It either faces this way or it faces up, right? And so if it faces up, which you wouldn't, I mean, you'd have to unscrew this, but like mine faces this way. So I try to get it in front of me. Whereas if it was going out the top, I would rotate it around and talk into the top of it. Right.
Yeah. I think that's what, because that mine has like a guard thingy here. So I kind of need to,
Yeah. So anyways, a little bit of audio stuff, but anyways, hey, thanks for having a great microphone. I'm going to do it. Like I said, I'll do a quick little introduction here. All right.